do solemnly swear that I will support
do solemnly swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of America
the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully fulfill the duties and responsibilities
and I will faithfully fulfill the duties and responsibilities
of the office of President of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police,
of the office of President of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police,
in accordance with the Constitution and bylaws of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police.
in accordance with the Constitution and bylaws of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police,
And I will at all times conduct myself
and I will at all times conduct myself
as a professional police administrator
as a professional police administrator
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, you are instructed.
Thank you, everyone. Just a couple things here. Greetings. I want to thank Superintendent Dr. Mansfield, our Board of Education here at HF, Principal Dr. Anderson, Assistant Principal Gail Smith, and all my friends here at HF High School for hosting us today. I want to give the greatest thanks to God for choosing me for this blessing and assignment on my life. There are many angels that have been placed in my life for this journey. Here are just a few. I want to thank Chief Pat O'Connor for recommending that I embark on this quest for presidency and for guiding me along the way. Chief, I sincerely thank you, but after this year, there might be a couple of people that are blaming. My prayers go out to President Jim Black and his family on the loss of his mother. He was there for me when I lost my dad, and I want to thank President Black for his leadership and friendship over this past year. God knew what he was doing when he placed him at the helm at an absolutely right time to see us through the challenges that we've had. I want to thank my Chicago Metropolitan Chapter and National Noble family, also President Mike Jones and my South Suburban Chiefs Association family. A special thanks goes to Mayor Bernard Alsbury, Hazel Crest elected officials, and Village Manager Dante Sawyer for allowing me to do all the things that I do and carry the Hazel Crest name across the state and across the country. Of course, I want to thank my amazing staff at the Hazel Crest Police Department. I would not be able to participate in all these things without them either. They deserve all the credit for the successes that we have in the village of Hazel Crest. I also thank all the friends and citizens that love and support me in my many endeavors. And I finally want to thank my biggest cheering section, my family. And my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my nieces, my nephews, my in-laws, and all the rest. I lost my dad over the last year, but I know he's smiling down on us today. Thanks to my mom, who was always encouraged us to strive for greatness, and I'm so happy that she's here today to witness this. Thanks to my 4 kids and my 4 grandkids who bring joy to my life, and I love you guys for that. And the final person I want to thank is the person that is the recipient of all the good, bad, and ugly that Mitch Davis has to offer in life. That's my wife, Carla. She's the one that gets left in the shadows and quite often neglected while I'm wearing all the different hats that I wear. She's the one that sees me come home exhausted at the end of the day when I'm too tired or even thoughtless to engage her in conversation. She's the one who sacrifices and her schedule revolves around mine. She's always the one that continues to keep me grounded as my solid foundation in spite of all that gets dumped on her as a result of being my spouse. I thank God for you, and I know that I would not be the man that I am without you. I thank you for loving me in spite of me. I started by sharing with you that I look at this as both a blessing and an assignment. For those of you who don't know, being a police was never a part of my thought process. As you heard the Attorney General say, I went to an engineering school, and I was a computer programmer prior to being a law enforcement officer. I began working for the Park Forest Police Department in 1991 after actually losing my job as a computer programmer, and I found myself handing out resumes at a minority job fair at DePaul University. That's a free recruitment strategy for you chiefs out there. Now, 30 years later, I am being sworn in as the first black president for the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police in its 80-year history, while also serving as the chairman of the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, as well as being a member of the board of directors for the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and having recently completed a term as president for the South Suburban Association of Chiefs of Police, and 3 terms as a national executive board member for the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, all while sitting as chief of police for my 3rd police department. For all this to come to fruition during a pandemic and during this time of racial reckoning in our country through the demands of criminal justice reform is not a coincidence. These are all tremendous blessings, but I consider them confirmation of my assignment in this place by God. This is His plan. I'm sure that there are some people that keep wondering, why does he keep emphasizing being the first black president of this organization in its 80-year history? Well, it's not about me. It's about 2 things. The first thing is this association. This association of almost 1,300 law enforcement executives saw fit to elect me as its leader, as a professional. That's inclusivity. It is my hope that other people of color will be encouraged that they can be leaders on a stage larger than their immediate jurisdictions. The other thing is diversity. Diversity offers different viewpoints and opinions that are based on different life experiences. Those life differences result in different lenses by which we see the world and our profession. It is my prayer that my lens can offer a view that will make people consider realities other than the ones that they are familiar with or comfortable with. Many of you have heard me say that I am a glass half full guy. I don't know anybody that would disagree with the fact that law enforcement has been faced with some challenges as of recently. Challenges are a part of life, and while I can't always control the challenges that I am presented with, I can control how I respond to them. Instead of dwelling on the challenge at hand, I choose to look for the opportunities that present themselves as a result of these challenges. I guess this goes back to my faith. I often have people come and tell me that they're sorry about what law enforcement is having to go through right now. While I know that their hearts are in the right place, I don't see it that way. I choose to see the challenges that we are faced with as opportunities for our profession to grow to heights that we have never seen before. Change can be uncomfortable, but it does not have to be bad. Inclusivity and diversity in our profession and in our hiring are 2 elements that I will focus on over the next year as we continue such efforts as legislative advocacy and the promotion of our 10-chair principle. But I will also focus on legislative implementation, community and youth relations, and gun violence and safety. Though I am sharing these things with you today, I'm not going to talk about specific initiatives today. I want to take a few minutes to remind myself and a few others in this room why we do this job. Every day that we put on our badges, we literally hold the legal power of life and death and the authority to take away a person's freedom in our hand. No one else in our society has this power. We must constantly remind ourselves that possessing such power and authority comes with great responsibility. In the Bible, Luke 12:48 states, "From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded. And from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked." Or in a few basic terms, to whom much is given, much is required. There are 4 things that I believe that we as a profession have to remember to keep us properly wielding this authority and power entrusted with us. Those 4 things are humility, service, respect, and empathy. Humility. Remember what we learned when we were in driver's ed? All of us that had driver's ed, they taught us that driving is not a right, it's a privilege. The same applies to the profession of law enforcement. We must always remember that it is a blessing to be able to do what we do. But we must also remember that just because we have been entrusted to do what we do, it makes us no better than anyone else that we deal with during the course of our duties. No matter what they have done, no matter where they live, or their socioeconomic status, no matter what their race, color, or creed, no matter what their religion, no matter what their sexual orientation or preference. This not only pertains to the interactions with citizens, but also with interactions with other officers. When we see or encounter someone, when I say so or encounter someone that has a challenged life, there's a phrase that I say to myself to keep myself humble. There but for the grace of God go out. This simply means that if a few things in my life had turned out a little bit different, that could have been me. When I was a police officer in Park Forest, I met a lady named Miss Lee. Miss Lee lived in the co-ops, like a townhouse area in our town, and it had a few challenges there. And Miss Lee was a senior citizen, had a couple grown daughters and their children that lived with her. And Miss Lee and I developed a friendship where she was a mom, another mom to me. Miss Lee would call me on holidays, we work 24/7. She called me on holidays, telling me, come get a plate. I know it's Christmas Day, and you're working, come get a plate. I know it's Christmas, I got a gift for you. I know it's Thanksgiving. So we developed a great relationship, and I would check on her, and she would check on me. And what Miss Lee taught me was that even in areas that have challenges, most of the people that live there are good people. They're great people who are out there just doing the best that they can, and they live where they live. So we have to remember that as we move forward. And she always made me remain humble and remembering that. Service. We are the ultimate customer service agents for an industry whose customer service line never closes. 911 is our customer service number, and our citizens are our clients. Some corporate customer service trainers teach their students that the customer is always right. Well, in theory, we know that this statement in its literal form is absolutely not true. But let's look at it from a different perspective. The objective of a good customer service agent is to resolve any problem that their client may have by reaching the best possible outcome. We want to have positive future interactions with our citizen clients, so we want to leave them with the best experience possible during every interaction. With that in mind, what if we change that statement to the customer should always walk away believing that they were right? Their belief is their reality, despite what we might know to be the truth. Back in 1991, I had a field training officer that shared a phrase with me, and it became part of my mindset that I still use to this day. He told me that your objective with every interaction that you have with a citizen should be to thank you. And I was like, hold it, man, we're arresting people. I should be trying to get them to thank me? He says, absolutely, that should be your objective. So, as I went through my career, it changed the way I dealt with folks. No matter what the circumstances were, I treated them with respect to try to get that thank you. And it made me conscious of trying to treat them right, no matter what the circumstances were that brought us together. So let's always remember that we are in the service industry. Respect or lack thereof can cost you your life in some circumstances. When I speak with groups of young people, I often ask them about respect, and many times they tell me, respect has to be earned. I then share with them an alternative theory by which I choose to operate. I choose to give my full respect to somebody until they show themselves not worthy of their respect. As Chief of Police of the Hazel Crest Police Department, I demand that my officers and staff treat every person that we encounter with respect. Treating someone with respect is not the same as respecting what they have done. Do I respect what a murderer or a child molester has done? Absolutely not. Will everyone I encounter treat me with respect? Absolutely not. But I can still treat them with respect while dealing with them. Their lack of respect to me does not give me permission to act in an unprofessional manner. Treating people with respect means not allowing any biases that we may have to weigh in our decision-making process for the treatment of any individual. Remember that in many cases, we have the power of discretion, which sometimes allows us to operate by the spirit of the law, not necessarily by the letter of the law. We have to remember that just because we have the power and authority to do things to others that others don't, that we don't always have to use that power. Just because we can do something doesn't mean that we always should do it. Remember that respect is a two-way street. We have to give it in order to get it. Once again, this doesn't only pertain to citizens, but to our fellow officers and others within our profession. Loss of respect of a police officer is often accompanied by loss of credibility and integrity, both of which are essential to our effective existence as police officers. We must remember to show respect to everyone. And finally, empathy. Empathy is something that our profession needs to spend more time instilling in our members. Operating in an empathetic manner automatically brings with it the other three things that I mentioned: humility, service, and respect. Empathy in its most fundamental form is simply the ability to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes to gain understanding about how they might feel. The first thing that's necessary to effectively empathize with someone is to actually care about that person. Proverbs 18:2 says, "Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in hearing their own opinions." You might not be somebody who follows the Bible, so how about we talk about Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit number 5 says, "Seek first to understand, then to be understood." Maybe you haven't read Covey's book, so I'm going to share something with you from an anonymous author. It says, "Before you can walk in another person's shoes, you must first take your own off." All of these three sources give us the fundamental requirements for empathy. Why is empathy important? At any given time during our workday as police officers, we may be faced with assisting someone of the worst moment of their lives. Because these situations for us can become routine, we have to guard against being callous or uncaring in our interaction because we don't know what that person is going through. Getting to know something about the circumstances of those that we interact with can give us insight. We still may not agree with or accept what they say or what they've done, but we may be able to understand why it happened. Showing empathy puts us in position to experience the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In all situations, we should ask ourselves before we speak and before we deal with somebody, we should ask ourselves, if this was me or one of my family members, how would I want them treated? Situation that happened to me here, actually at this high school, with HF High School. I worked here for over 20 years as a police liaison officer. And in the lunchroom one day, I was working one day during the daytime, and one of the cashiers in the cafeteria came up to me and says, "Mitch, there's a kid every day. He steals something from the lunch line every day." And she says, "The thing about it is, he gets free lunch." She says, "But he steals something every day." She said, "I'm going to point him out to you when he comes in the cafeteria, and can you please take him up to the dean's office?" Absolutely, no problem. As the crowd is coming into the cafeteria, she points him out to me. So I'm watching him as he goes through the line. Now, this young man was a young man I had a relationship with. I had a relationship with him, but he was a troubled young man. He presented challenges for folks throughout this high school. But he and I had a decent relationship. Goes through the lunch line, he gets his stuff, and he gets in line, and he's waiting in line, and what does he do? He sticks a couple of different bags of chips in his book bag. Comes up, gives his ID card, gets his free lunch. As he comes out of line, I say, "Hey man, come on, let's go. We're going up to the dean's office." "Officer Davis, what are you talking about?" "Dude, I just saw you steal those chips. I don't know what the heck you're doing. You get free lunch. Why would you steal something and jeopardize getting yourself in trouble? Why would you do that, man? It just makes no sense." So I'm lighting into this kid, and we're walking up to the dean's office. And as we get to the hallway by ourselves, he says, "Officer Davis," he says, "the reason I steal something every day is because I don't know if I'm going to have something to eat that night. Because I don't know till I get there. So every day when I come through here, I take something extra in case my mom's not able to feed me that night." First of all, I felt about that day. But it put me in a different mindset. Yes, we still went to the dean's office, but we weren't going to the dean's office for him to get punished. We were going to the dean's office for me to help him find resources so he didn't have to steal every day. So even though I consider myself an empathetic person, that was an aha moment for me, that I can always be better. And we, as individuals in other professions, can always be better. So empathy is important. So I'm going to close out by sharing an encounter that I had that kind of encompasses all four of those things: the humility, service, respect, and empathy. You all remember earlier I talked about Miss Lee, the older lady who was like a mom to me. Miss Lee, one Christmas, as I told you, Miss Lee called me over. "Hey, I know you're working on the holiday. Come on over and get your plate." I go over there, and Miss Lee meets me at the door, and I'm thinking I'm coming to get a plate, and she's got family in the house, and she stops me in the kitchen, and she says, "I got to share something with you." She says, "Do you remember about a year and a half ago," she said, "you did a search warrant on a drug house. And when you went to the drug house, there was a lady there with some kids." I said, "Hey, I do." So about a year and a half before that, I was a detective most of the time in part when I worked on the streets, and I did narcotics investigations. And there was a dope dealer who would find addicts, and he would say, okay, I'm gonna give you free drugs if you let me sell out of your house. That's a great deal for somebody who's addicted to substances. So I got a search warrant, I went there, he was not there, but this lady and her 3 kids, small kids, were in the house. We found drugs in the house. After we did the search warrant, I sat down and I talked to her. Had a long conversation. Now she's doing drugs, letting somebody sell dope out of her house. I'm supposed to be calling DCFS. But something or someone put something on my heart. And I sat down and I talked to this lady. And we had a long conversation. And at the end of that conversation, I told her I was not going to call DCFS to come get her kids. Now, I'm a mandated reporter, so I'll probably go up the law here. Hope the statute of limitations is up. But I didn't call DCFS. But I told her that if I found out that she was doing anything as far as narcotics, I would still call DCFS on her. And I hadn't heard from her since then. Back to Ms. Lee's house, a year and a half later at Christmas. She says, that was my daughter. She said, I never told you that was my daughter, even though I knew what happened and she was the detective that did it, just because I was embarrassed. My daughter couldn't come to my house because she was an addict. She would steal from me, so I wouldn't even let her come to my house. So I was embarrassed to tell you. She said, but I want to show you something. So she walks me into the living room where the family's at, and I speak to everybody, and there's somebody there, somebody I didn't know, and she stands up, and she says, you don't even know who I am, do you? I said, no, I'm Mitchell Davis, and she says, I'm the lady from a year and a half ago. She said, you talked to me that day. She said, you talked to me like no one ever talked to me before. And she said that next day, I left everything. I took my kids, I went to Minnesota. She said, I've never used drugs since then. She says, I'm in school, I'm about to become a nursing assistant. And she says, you know what, I'm about to get married and introduce you to my husband. She's crying, Ms. Lee's crying, I'm crying. But those are the things that I didn't have that conversation with her for that. But those are the things that we do in this profession on a day-to-day basis, and we never know the outcomes. We must remember that negative deeds by police officers will always be publicized. That's just the way it is. We also know that there are police officers that do things that they have no business doing. But we also know that most police officers do great deeds every day without any recognition. They do these things because they care. Good officers are not the exception. We are the rule. It is our responsibility as chiefs to equip our people with leadership, policy, procedure, and legislation that positions them to equitably exert humility, service, respect, and empathy with all people. In doing so, we can hold the bad exceptions accountable and saturate our profession with the good rules. I thank you, and I look forward to serving you as your president over the next year.